Yeah, welcome to this session where we are going to be dealing with forms in HTML. Now, most of the time you need to get entries, values from the user, and to do that, we do that using form in HTML. And that is what we are going to be looking at in this session. We're going to be looking at some tags that allow us to take inputs using different formats from the user. And we have different types of format that you can use to take values from the user, and that range from you can take value as an input, you can take value as a select, whereby you allow the user to select from a particular predefined options. You can also take value from as radio, and that this radio is also like a checkbox that allow the user to select but just one value that can be selected. You can also take value as text area. Text area and inputs, they are almost the same thing, just that when you want to take more words, more length of words, then you use text area instead of the inputs. And you also have the checkbox. The checkbox and radio too, they are almost the same, just that checkbox you can select multiple values, while for radio you can only select one value, and so on and so forth. So we are going to be looking at all these input forms, inputs, values in this section. So the first one, anytime you're dealing with forms in HTML, irrespective of the input field that you want to use or irrespective of the value that you want to take, you must wrap all these in a form tag. So it must be wrapped in a form tag. So anytime you want to take entries from the user, then you must wrap it around the form tag. And this form tag has different values. That maybe it has value of action. That's if the user submit the form, what action do you want to perform. Most of the time you perform this by maybe sending it to the server. Maybe you have a server side code, you can just put that server side code URL here, but you are not going to be doing that here. And you also have method. The method can either be a post or a get, and the most popular one is the post. So because you are taking entry from the user, then and then the user submits, then you post it to the server. And we also have encryption type. Encryption type, this encryption type is also like, okay, maybe you want to take only text, then you use text plain. But if you want to take maybe a file, then it's always advisable that you select this multi-path form data, because if you don't select it, it might not be saying that file. So that is the three most popular attributes of form. That now let's now go to the form elements. Now let me wrap it around div. I said when you want to wrap something around, when you want to put it in a container, then you can wrap it around the first one is the label. The label is just give the user description of what they should enter in the input field. So let me say the label for name, and this label always take an attribute for 4, and the 4, let me use it for name. And if I come down here, I want to take the user's name, then the the form element that I'm going to be using to take the username is going to be inputs. So that is if I want to take a short text from the user, then I use inputs. Now this inputs, notice something that here I have attribute of for name. It's always advisable that I use ID of whatever name that I specify here, whatever value that I specify for 4 here, then I should use the value as the ID of the input field. So if I say name, and another attribute that this can take is type. So we have different type. It can be type of number, it can be type of text, depending on what you are expecting the user to enter. This can also be like data type of the input field. So type of name, number, email. But in this case, since we want user to enter their name, then it's going to be a type of text. So it's going to be a type of text. And so let's just save this and see it in action. So something the f- the functionality of specifying this for property and making that value to be the ID of this input field is that when the user come here and click on the label, it's going to make the input field to be active. But let's make the for to be maybe name 1 and the ID is name. It's not going to make the form field to be active when we click on the label. So you can see that I'm clicking on the label now and nothing is happening, because so it's always good that your for property and the ID of the input field should be the same thing. So Now you also have other property that you can, for better visibility, let me make this. Okay, now you also have other property you can specify for this, and that is you also can specify the name. So this name is always used at the when you post it to the server. So the name should be name, and you can also specify another property called placeholder. This placeholder is what the users see on the text on the input feed before they start entering any value. So the placeholder can be maybe enter your name, and if I save, you see the placeholder in action. Before I start clicking on anything on the input feed, the placeholder will be active. So if I press it, you can see that the placeholder is gone now. Now you also can specify other attributes like required. Maybe the user cannot submit the form until they fill something into the input feed, and you can also have autofocus too. Maybe once the page is loaded, you want the input feed to be active. So once the page is loaded, you want the input feed to be active. You can also make it to be autofocus. Let's remove the autofocus and let's see it in action. Okay, so autofocus is just make the user to just make it attract some attention. You can see it attracts a bit of attention from the user to the. You can also have autocomplete, like while the user is typing, maybe there are some values that have entered into the feed before, then you can have autocomplete to be on, so that as I'm typing, it can be helping me to, maybe I type my name, you can see that it's helping me to complete it based on the values that has been taken from me before. So you can also specify the the maximum length. There are a lot of property you can specify to make this input field to be unique. Maybe the maximum length you want to take is just 100, so the user will not be able to enter anything beyond 100. Let me just make it 2. So if I enter 2, that means I can only enter 2 characters. So if I enter AB, if I try to enter more words, it will definitely not accept it. So because the maximum length is specified, of course, we will not put any name to be maximum length of 2, because we have names that are more than that. So we can just make it to be possibly 100, possibly 100. And other input type can be, let me just duplicate this. Let me just duplicate this, shift turn arrow. So other input type, maybe you want to take the email, and just like this name, let me just change this can now be input for name, email, and the type will not be text again, because there's a specific type of format that email always take anytime we are taking email. So the type will be email. So the type will be, and if you want to see other types, you can just put your cursor here and press Ctrl space. It will bring all the different types of input element that you can take from the user. You can take input type of button, checkbox, color, date time looker, email, file, hidden, image, month, number, password. This password is just as you are typing it, it will make it to not be visible. So for now we are dealing with email, and the name is going to be maybe email 2. This is always considered the server side or the backend side of the. So you can make the input a placeholder to be enter your email. If I save this now, and you can see now that I have my email. So let me just break this div using breakpoints. Let me just break this and save so that I have some space. So email, and enter your email. So maximum length, I can decide to remove it so that user can enter their email without any restriction. And autocomplete too, you can decide to put it on and off, and autofocus too, you can decide to remove this. And you can, if you want it to be required, that means you want the user to be able to enter it, and without entrance you don't want them to be able to submit the form, then you should make it to be required. And another type that you can have is, I said we can have type of, okay, let me just use one type of inputs and to just show you. Now we also have type of number where you can only enter. So let me just call this others so that we see it in action while we try and also save time. So others, let me make this others. So where we see the other types of input type in action. Others, and the name cannot be others, others. So let me just call this other inputs types. Other input types can also be required. Now, the another type I want us to look at is this number type. So where you only enter numbers, and if you come here, you can, if you try to press A, you try to press B, to not take it until you press 1 or 2 or 9, or as the case may be, any number you're trying to enter. You can see the uh, this arrow up and arrow down. If you click on it, it's going to increase it, and if you click on the down arrow, it's going to decrease it. Now you see that it's decreasing by 1. Maybe you want it to decrease by 10, depending on what you're taking. You can just add the property called step. You can just add the property called step, and the step can be 10. So if you make it to be 10, every increment is going to be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and you can also decrease it to even be a decimal number. You can also decrease to even maybe 0.01. So when you are increasing, it's going to be increasing at that range, depending on what you are taking. Now you can also set the minimum value. Maybe the minimum value that you can take is 45. So if you start now and I pick from the lowest, start from 45 and let's go up from there, and you can also set the maximum. Maybe you are dealing with percentage, maybe the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 100, or maybe you are dealing with age and you don't want anybody that is less than 18 to be able to enter into the system. You can set the minimum to be 18 and the maximum to be, maybe you're dealing with youth, you can just make it 24. So between 18 and 24. So once I enter, so once I start increasing, it will start from 18. Now another type of input field that we have is that is that about number. We also have type of password. And let me remove this minimum and maximum and step because it does not apply to password. So if I save now, we have the password. So the password, the only thing that is different is that you can enter anything, number or, but it's just that as I entering it, it will make it to be hidden, so that in case another person is looking at your system screen, they will not be able to keep track of what your password is. Now another type of input feed that we have is the dates, the type of dates, where you can it will give you chance to it will come as a drop down, and you can select dates, or maybe January or something like that, and just change months, change the dates, and even change the year, as the case may be. So that is that about dates. Now we also have another type of input field. Of course, for dates too, you can set the minimum value. So you can set minimum value, maybe you want to set it to last year, so you can just say 2022, and that's January, and the date is maybe 23. If you save it now, if you come now and you try to pick, so you see the year will not go beyond 2022 because that's the minimum, and also the maximum too. You can also have set the maximum. Maybe you want to set it to the end of this year, depending on the application you are working on, and 31. So by the time you open this drop down and you want to select the dates, it will not go beyond 2023. So that is the max and minimum property. Of course, you can set required to, and you can also set a placeholder as you have been doing for the other input type. Another input type that we have is time. Apart from the fact that we can specify dates, we can also specify time. You can also specify time, and with this I can decide to remove this minimum and maximum. So this time too, if you open this drop down, you can select, okay, maybe 12:02. This is the minute, this is the hour, and you can set either AM or PM as the case may be, or just using, all these are done using only HTML. So another type that you have is the file, whereby you allow the user to select a file and upload it. So you can you can have a type of file, You can have a type